All right, so we're going to focus on the effects of the U.S. entry into World War II and how that affected technology and the economy. So we're going to focus on the effects. If we're looking at causes on this or kind of context, really, you're talking about kind of things like the Great Depression, which affects the economy. You're talking about the growth of radio and other technologies in the 1920s. In terms of the U.S. entry into World War II, I think the Lend-Lease Act and the cash and carry policy, because those are all relevant to the production that's going to happen during World War II. Okay, so now when we look at the effects, one of the things that happens is there's a failure of government management of the economy. What that means is you have government agencies like the War Production Board and the Office of War Mobilization that are supposed to kind of coordinate the wartime economy so that businesses are producing what the government needs for the war. And a lot of these boards and organizations, government organizations, they lack the authority to do, to kind of make sure things were happening. And the leadership was kind of not as strong as what was happening in World War One. Because in World War One, you had the War Industries Board, which is pretty effective, but in World War Two, it's not effective. Also, you have the Office of Price Administration, which actually had kind of a direct control of the economy by freezing wages and prices, rationing goods that were needed for the war. And these were not very popular. People did not like these, especially because we're coming out of the Great Depression. So once people started working, they wanted to make money. And the fact that their wages were frozen made people not super thrilled about that. And then business owners were not happy about their prices being limited and being set by the government. Okay, so the government doesn't manage the economy that well. However, that being said, there is a huge amount in economic increase in economic production, right, due to the assembly lines and the efficiency of these assembly lines to produce planes and ships and tanks and all this stuff for war. Because of these assembly lines and so much stuff needed to be produced, unemployment basically disappeared, which means that there was no longer a need for the New Deal jobs programs like the Works Progress Administration or the Civilian Conservation Corps or whatever. So there was no need for that. So the New Deal kind of ends or is scaled back significantly during World War II. Also, there was impacts of the economic production are felt in the West Coast, particularly because of the aircraft industry is centered around the West, particularly in California. We're going to see California really increase in importance in the country at this point going forward. Finally, there's an increase in union membership, which means workers feel more protected. They're more, unions are being more acceptable. But these unions also had to promise during the war they would not go on strike, which is kind of one of their main weapons. So union membership was up, but their kind of main weapon was limited here. Finally, we have the government funding of technology. So the government is spending money so that the technology can be developed to fight in the war. So, for example, the National Defense Research Committee, they spend $100 million in government money on research for weapons and defense and that sort of thing. The Manhattan Project is probably the most famous example of government funding of technology. This was a research on the atomic bomb and resulted in 2 bombs being dropped on Japan at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So this was a successful project in using science and technology to develop weapons for the war. Also, the United States had effects on code breaking. They used kind of a lot of the advances for the Americans tended to be on the defensive side. Obviously the atomic bomb is an exception to that, but code breaking and then radar and sonar with the British. So the Allies kind of had these defensive breakthroughs using technology. And that was in large part because of the government funding using kind of early computers and stuff to use technology to kind of defend themselves against the aggression of Germany.